At WFM Labs, our organization recognizes the importance of gaining market insights to compete effectively and provide better goods and services to our customers. However, exchanging price or commercially sensitive information with competitors can violate antitrust laws and harm competition. To avoid antitrust risk, it is essential to ensure that information exchanges in the WFM Labs community are reasonable and promote competition. This includes avoiding discussions or coordination of sensitive topics such as customer prices, pricing paid to vendors, compensation paid to employees, or proprietary information. If you would like more information, please refer to the guidelines outlined by the FTC and DOJ, Antitrust Guidelines for Collaborations Among Competitors. In addition, WFM Labs meetings are being recorded. By continuing to be in the meeting, you are consenting to be recorded. And finally, we ask that all participants review and comply with our Code of Conduct. Thank you.
Hey, good evening, everybody. Welcome to our second ChatGPT Hacks session. Our agenda for this session is I want to go through just a quick overview of the plugins or the plugin settings that you need to have on if you want to test any of this. I'm going to go into a little bit of advanced data analysis and then show you hack number 4, which is really integrating ChatGPT with Noteable, one of the plugins. I will highlight a few other plugins and then I'll open it up at the end if anybody has any questions they want to dive into. So let's just dive right in. So the very first thing is everything I'm demonstrating here this evening on this hack session is for ChatGPT 4, and you do need to have a subscription in order to access these things. So there's a feature that costs $20 a month that you have to be subscribed to. Otherwise, you really won't be able to access those things. I showed everyone in session 1 how to get at the settings themselves, but I'll just touch on that real quick again. I would say in the bottom left, there's 3 dots, but every day the interface is changing. So if you're looking, my interface changed today. This may look a little bit different, but there should be 3 dots or a section down at the bottom where you can go into settings and beta. And in that particular section, in order to leverage what I'm going to just demonstrate this evening, you do have to, under beta features, have the plugins enabled and advanced data analysis enabled. Again, these are changing very quickly. So you may or may not see the menus look exactly like this, like already. I saw that the browse with Bing now is gone because it is just integrated into the core ChatGPT interface itself. Again, if you want a few more details on this, I'm posting these videos. I'm going to go pretty fast here this evening, but I am recording here. And at the end of the day, if there's something I covered too fast, you want to go back and look at it, we're posting these videos on YouTube at our WFM Labs channel itself. So let's dive into this evening's. Again, I'm going to be using ChatGPT 4, but before I go into plugins, I just want to touch on this notion of advanced data analysis. OpenAI and ChatGPT is rapidly changing how their interface works. And some of what I'm showing you tonight, you can do directly in ChatGPT as opposed to using plugins. And that's a theme that we'll probably touch on in other sessions going forward. I'm going to look at things from the lens of workforce management and contact centers in general. Very simple prompt that you could put into ChatGPT 4 under this advanced data analysis is to ask it to generate a set of annual daily call volumes for a year and show me some examples of how forecasting analysis can be conducted on that data. You don't have to upload any data. You can actually just tell ChatGPT to go ahead and synthesize the data. That's what I did on this particular prompt. And ChatGPT comes back and says, absolutely, I can simulate some data. We can look at things like seasonal trends, weekly patterns. We can then also do some analysis, time series analysis, moving average analysis on that call center data. And we can go on then and dive deeper into the insights. So without even using a plugin, you now have the capability of just typing some instructions and telling ChatGPT to go ahead and create a data set. I did this and it came back. It worked out some call volumes. They're all simulated, random. Here's a call center with 1,000 to 1,400 calls a day. It plots that data out over the course of the year, shows me trends on that volume, and then basically says, next we can choose a forecasting method to analyze this data on. I basically go ahead and say, sure, go ahead, let's analyze it. It goes and does a time series decomposition on the data. I'll just take a side note and say, I actually hired someone to build an application like this a few years ago that took data and leveraged R and Python to decompose our call center data. If you're not familiar, if you're not in workforce management, and that's Greek, it essentially takes daily call center data or this trend of data and breaks it down between trend, seasonality, and residual data. That to me was pretty amazing that it just does that inherently. It goes through and does a little bit of analysis telling us the mean absolute percentage error and the seasonality components. And then it goes ahead and says, hey, with these findings here, we could forecast using exponential smoothing models or Holt-Winter models, and basically asks me, what do we want to look at? I tell it, let's go ahead and look at Holt-Winters, and all of a sudden it's generating a forecast for me, going out using the Holt-Winters methodology. I haven't uploaded any data. I'm not using a plugin. I'm just starting to use functionality that's inherently being integrated more deeply into ChatGPT. So what's it doing right here? What's this work that it's doing in the background? And essentially what it's doing is it's translating my requests, come up with some call volume data, daily call volume. Let's look at some trends. And it's writing my request in Python code in the background. It's building a simulated data set, and then it's going ahead and it's working with my natural language to say, let's look at the trends and let's go out, and trend this out. So that's before we're even dealing with plugins. These are some of the things that natively you can start to do, within ChatGPT itself. So let's take a look at plugins, which is one of the hacks this evening here. The plugins themselves are still functional. They're continuing to change these menus. This menu, may be collapsed for you. You may see things different. The plugins actually just changed for me an hour and a half, 2 hours ago. So now my plugins button, instead of in the middle, is up here at the left. So if you go back and try any of this, I kid you not, just an hour and a half ago, this menu changed. So if you're watching this video and you say, hey, I don't see anything that looks kind of like this, it may look like this. OpenAI is changing these menus very rapidly. So where you find the plugins may look a little bit different, but at the end of the day, plugins are still enabled. And at the end, when you go through this, whether it's that upper left-hand corner or whether it's right here, the very first step in working through plugins is to go out and get a plugin. They currently have a plugin store. If you scroll down, as I demonstrated, it'll pop up another menu with this plugin store. I searched for the plugin Notable, and then I installed it. It said uninstall right there because I've already got it installed. Once I install a plugin itself, I then have to activate it. So I go back up into where this little clicky arrow is and essentially have to scroll down and activate the plugins. You can activate more than one plugin. You can actually, as of this recording, activate up to 3 plugins at a time. So I just demonstrated how I had 2 plugins, but for this, we'll just stick with 1 plugin to start. So what are these plugins essentially? I view them as tools. The ChatGPT is a large language model, which itself is a tool set. It's a tool set that you can have conversations back and forth with. But the real power for me is when you take a large language model like ChatGPT, it allows you to connect to more sophisticated tools that aren't just large language models. They may be a programming platform or other types of tools that, when combined with a large language model, allows you to build out and really enhance processes, whether it's data analytics or workflow or sentiment mapping. There's just a host of applications where using a large language model plus a tool itself allows you to really get much more out of ChatGPT as a whole. In this particular case, what I'm really demonstrating is how anyone who can type out a concept can really become an in-depth data analyst. The data analytics that you can do by combining a large language model with a tool like Noteable that I'm going to demonstrate really unleashes the power of large language models. I'm not endorsing specifically this tool, but I'm going to demonstrate one of the plugins that I feel is pretty powerful. It's something called Noteable. Noteable is a Jupyter notebook. Jupyter notebooks are sort of like smart digital notebooks where you can write down thoughts, documentation. But what's different about Jupyter notebooks is that you can bring code to life. You can start to integrate Python, R, a whole series of different codes in with this notebook. And if you're not a programmer and never touched an ounce of code, that's the beauty here, is we can combine these Jupyter notebooks with ChatGPT, have no experience coding whatsoever, and yet leverage code to really do deep data analytics. This is a great platform to try out because you can sign up for nothing. There's a starter package that's $0 that gives you unlimited notebooks, places where you can upload data or just tell ChatGPT, to generate some data and to store it here in Noteable. I'm not going to go through the setups in Noteable itself. There's a few videos out there how you get going in Noteable, but it's pretty easy. If you sign up, again, no dollars involved in it, gives you a good playground in terms of how to work with ChatGPT tied to an actual Jupyter notebook. So in this particular case, getting started is really first activating that Noteable plugin. Again, you go up, you use this icon up at the top here to activate your Noteable plugin. And then there's really two methods in which you can start to explore data. You can go into the plugin's website and start working there, or you can work directly in ChatGPT with the notebook itself. If I've got a set of data, let's say I've got this spreadsheet with my volume and the handle time data, I can go ahead and just upload it in Noteable, and then I can flip back over to ChatGPT and say, hey, can you see this file? And basically it goes and says, I've retrieved the contents of the file. I see the data. You've got a date, volume, and handle time, which is exactly what I had, just a date, volume, and handle time on a simple spreadsheet that I uploaded into this space. And then it says, would you like to perform any analysis on the data? And if I say, yes, I want to go ahead and explore it, it starts working with Noteable to create this notebook titled, a long word here, and gives you a link so that you can follow along between ChatGPT and the notebook itself. That's one method. You can go upload the data into the application that you're connecting to, and then go back over to ChatGPT and start to ask it to talk to Noteable. I can also be connected to Noteable and just say, hey, would you create 1 year's worth of data, similar to what I demonstrated before when I wasn't connected to ChatGPT? I basically said, would you create 1 year of data to demonstrate some analysis in Noteable? I've got daily call volume, handle time, for 1/1 through 11/1. Let's make some assumptions around this call center being open 7 days a week, 5,000 to 6,000 calls, roughly half that on Saturdays and Sundays. So I just give it some parameters. It comes back and asks me some clarifying questions around how I want to generate this synthetic data. And I gave it a response. I said, yes, let's do a smooth transition between seasonality and whatnot. Now, just another quick note, your prompt and your response may or may not look like this if you followed along and did this just the exact way I did. In episode 1, I showed you kind of hack number 1, which was Professor Synapse, which does this structuring of back and forth prompts with you. It really guides you in terms of clarifications on your prompting itself. So again, your prompts may or may not look exactly like this or your responses, but at the end of the day, we're getting to, regardless if you're using method 1 or method 2, we're getting to a point where the data has been uploaded in that Jupyter notebook, and we want to go now and essentially start to perform some data analysis on that. So again, this is where ChatGPT will say, all right, I've done some exploratory analysis. I see, data, or I've done some analysis on the distribution of calls offered, the average handle time, time series data for handle time and volume. And then it said, would you like me to do any other analysis? This was a little odd because usually when I say, let's perform some exploratory analysis, it'll start to show me as well as tell me. In this case, it just told me I did some analysis, but it didn't show me anything. So I went ahead and prompted, could you show me the visual results here that are in Notable? And once I did so, certainly it came back and said, yes, here's kind of some of the things that I see. Here's the distribution of the calls offered by buckets of time. Here's the distribution of our handle time by bins. Here's the time series data of calls offered over the year. Here's time series of the average handle time over the year. And it goes ahead and gives me a link in which I can go back and look at that data itself. That's convenient because before, when I was just typing the information in ChatGPT, the nice thing about Notable is I now have this data in a notebook where I can go back and reference it. And as I scroll back up looking at those charts, I see something similar to what I was demonstrating before, which is ultimately I'm seeing Python code baked right into my notebook. Now, again, I'm not a programmer. I didn't write any of this code. I simply told ChatGPT, I want to look at this data. And yet it went through, it created the Python code for the data visualization using 2 Python libraries. And the nice thing about this is you're creating a record of how this data was analyzed itself. So I flip back and say, hey, let's do some trend analysis for this call volume, analyzing things like seasonality. Let's forecast out the remainder of November and December. Let's bucket handle time by the day of the week. And here you can just tell ChatGPT to explore, and it'll go around and around, basically generating graphs. I'll come back and say, I'd like to look at 4 new things or 5 new things. I may not even know what I want to look at. I'll just say, hey, how about 5 more? Explore something that's interesting and show it to me. Here, if I was doing data analysis myself, I'd spend hours doing this and just looking, for these patterns and these trends themselves. And again, the great thing about connecting ChatGPT, a large language model, with tools like this is, again, you've got a record of everything that you've done. Whereas if you're just doing this in ChatGPT, once your session's over, you've kind of lost your logic. So by combining a large language model with something like Notable, you're creating this record that has not only the charts, but the code and the logic that went along creating it. So that's Notable, just one plugin itself. There's other plugins out there. There's a plugin called Ask Your PDF, which for the last month or 2, I found valuable because ChatGPT originally wasn't able to read PDFs. So you could go out to this website, you could load up PDFs and essentially ask conversations of your PDF documents. You could explore those PDFs and go after and dive into them. This particular example of a plugin, I think, is going to disappear in the next few weeks, if not months, because of some changes that were just released, which I'll speak to at the end within ChatGPT. A lot of these plugins themselves have been wrappers to ChatGPT, and some of the functionality and the enhancements that ChatGPT released on Monday, I think we'll see some of these plugins disappear. I don't think we'll see things like Notable disappear, and there's other plugins that have very useful application. You may or may not have heard, hey, ChatGPT does or doesn't do math well. ChatGPT is a prediction engine that looks at language. It can do math, but it also can hallucinate on math. So a pretty powerful plugin that I use is something called the Wolfram Alpha plugin. Wolfram Alpha is this vast computational engine itself, which enables you to do complex mathematics, but from an authoritative source itself. It's factual mathematical. It's a factual mathematical computation engine that isn't just going to hallucinate answers. So this particular plugin is useful if you want to get into deeper level mathematics. And there's a lot of areas within workforce management where we do a ton of math. Wolfram Alpha is cool in that it has a whole series of different knowledge bases based on everything like geography and distances, to plotting sine waves. There's just a ton of cool stuff you can do with Wolfram. That's one of them that I would suggest people look at. The Notable one's a good one to play with as well. But this is just another example of a plugin and how you leverage those. If you go out to the plugin store, you will see there's a ton of them out there. If I look at all of them today, there's over 1,000. I wouldn't spend a huge amount of time going around and just trying plugin after plugin. There's a ton of stuff I think that is going to disappear with some of the releases that just came out on Monday, but a lot of plugins that extend the functionality of ChatGPT, allowing ChatGPT to integrate, with other tools and technology. Rather than go through 130 pages of plugins down here, I tell people, hey, go and take a look at under plugins. As you scroll down to the plugin store, just look at the popular ones to start with. Like I said, there's a lot of things that are changing here that I think will make a number of these plugins obsolete, but there are other plugins that I feel are very useful and will remain, important integrations back into ChatGPT, like the Notable plugin and like the Wolfram plugin itself. Zapier too is an interesting one. If you're into automation, there's some cool things you can do between Zapier and ChatGPT. So just to kind of wrap this up here, large language models, a lot of people still treat them like search engines. Go find an answer or type me, out a blog post on XYZ. But really the power behind something like ChatGPT is to use it as a conversational gateway to more advanced tools themselves. So instead of just thinking about ChatGPT as a, hey, I'm going to prompt you, I'm going to get a response, think about ChatGPT as this tool that can really extend your ability to use tools that may be outside your domain of expertise. Like I said, anybody who pokes around at this can all of a sudden look like a data scientist with the type of analysis that you can do by simply connecting ChatGPT to Notable or ChatGPT Wolfram Alpha. Like I said, I wouldn't spend too much time with Ask Your PDF. I think that'll go away. I'll also just say, I speak to a lot of people and they're like, hey, I can't get to ChatGPT. And a lot of folks at work, this is still walled off because of security concerns. If your access is denied to ChatGPT, I would strongly encourage you to do it outside of work just to get your skills up to using this tool itself, because at some point, your company will end up with a large language model of some sort that is approved and inside their four walls. And once your corporation, your company opens the door to give you access to large language models, it'll be helpful for you to already understand how these things integrate with other tools. And once you understand that, you'll be taking legacy processes different ways that we may have done things on spreadsheets in the past, and thinking through brand new ways that you leverage large language models to really accelerate things like data analytics by using things like Jupyter Notebooks. As I said, a lot has changed very rapidly. I'm going to do another session in December. On Monday, Sam Altman with ChatGPT held a developers conference where they released a number of significant announcements on ChatGPT. He did not endorse my hack session for December 14th, but on December 14th, I want to kind of dig into some of these changes. Things are coming along very rapidly. There's something called customizable GPTs that I think is going to be part of the reason why some of these plugins will disappear, some of them will remain. Real big news around extended context. What does it mean that they're expanding to 128,000 tokens? I'll explain what some of that means at the end of the day and what it means to how we can use some of these hacks. They're extending multimedia capabilities and just updated the real world knowledge. I think it goes up to March or April now of 2023. But one of the things I do think that we're probably going to focus the next session on is this notion of GPTs. If you haven't seen this on Monday's announcement, they've essentially announced this ability to create customized versions of ChatGPT for specific uses. So if you've got a use case where you want to build out a little ChatGPT model that has a narrow focus, but leverages the power behind data sets or knowledge or other things that you may have insight into, you now can go out and build your own little ChatGPT modules. And eventually, OpenAI is going to be releasing a ChatGPT store. I kind of think of it like Apple all of a sudden, again, with the Apple Store and with apps that people go out and build. This feels a lot like that all over again, but using large language models. So tune in next month on December 14th at 6 p.m. I will hold another one of these little sessions and dig into the latest releases of ChatGPT 4 Turbo. They call it Turbo, is their latest release that was just activated on Monday. I want to thank everybody for joining me. If you aren't a part of WFM Labs, we invite everybody. There's no cost to joining us. Just click on wfmlabs.org. You can join our organization where we post these videos and where we share insights on all of that. I want to thank everybody for joining. I will stay on. It's at the bottom of the hour. I actually got that done in